The Tier 7 Premium IJN Battleship Key has been in the game for a long time. It's a global XP ship, basically a copy-paste of the Tier 7 Tech Tree IJN Battleship Amagi, and it used to be that really the only difference was the Key had 6-kilometer torpedoes, whereas the Amagi did not. Now, though, in the July 2025 update, the Key received a buff. You might actually call it a rework of the ship. A lot was changed, but before we get into that, the commander I'm running to facilitate using this buff is Kondo, rank 16 legendary 4. He's got Hipper and Haruna as inspirations in order to build into the secondaries. Because in this July 2025 update, the base secondary firing range on the Key was increased from 5 to 7 kilometers. The dispersion was improved for both the smaller 100 millimeter secondary guns and for the larger 140s. And then on top of that, the HE shell penetration for both calibers of secondaries was increased. The 100 millimeter secondaries pen 30 millimeters, just like the Akizuki and the Kitakazi's 100 millimeter guns. And then the larger 140s pen 35 millimeters. The reload time was slightly nerfed on the smaller ones by 1 second. It was buffed on the larger ones by 2 seconds. And the torpedo range was increased from 6 to 8 kilometers. And then on top of that, the enhanced secondary targeting consumable was moved from slot 3 to slot 4. So as we begin the game, you can see the secondaries starting to sound off against the Flandre. Only 11 hits registered so far, but if we were going to compare this Key rework to any other rework, it would probably be most apt to compare it to the Flandre itself, considering when that ship debuted, it was much more about the main guns, sort of like the Key, and then later on in its life, it received a buff to its secondary range, and maybe its DPM as well. But one thing about the Flandre is its smaller secondaries will not be penning anything that they hit. They're only good for starting fires, and they certainly do start a lot of fires. The Key, on the other hand, its secondaries will pen a good deal of what they hit. As you can see against the Flandre, we're getting damage when the secondaries land. Not necessarily the 100 millimeter secondaries unless they hit the superstructure, which will be 19 millimeter plating, so they'd be able to pen that. But the 140s, well, the Flandre is a French battleship, and so it's coated in 32 millimeters of armor everywhere. The 140s pen 35. Those are the source of our damage, and on top of that, we've lit 2 fires already. Now we're in a position here with our stern pointed toward the Charlie Cap, sort of stern tanking, as we've got 3 battleships pushing in. The Sinop, of course the Flandre that's hiding behind the island now, and the Bismarck out there in the distance is coming in. Bismarck is going to end up being the priority target for us because both Sinop and Flandre are in a position where we've got our sterns pointed at them. So even if Flandre wasn't behind the island, if those guys shoot at us, they're going to be hitting our angled stern or our angled side armor. Bismarck, on the other hand, is flanking, doing the thing that a battleship really should be doing, which is ironic to see from a Bismarck, because usually they just push in blindly. Or they don't do anything, they wait for their team to sink, and then they push in. But this guy is actually doing some tactics. He's flanking. He's going to try to get our broadside, and that is going to make him priority target. We don't want to allow him to get the broadside. However, the Key, much like the Amagi, does have a little bit of turtleback going on. The turtleback slopes, though, are much steeper than what you would find on the Bismarck. And so I don't think it works all the time. You'd be able to pen that at certain distances and angles much more easily than you could pen the Bismarck's turtleback slopes. Speaking of which, well, not great damage from the guns. If you're going to build into the secondaries, I found that the consistency and accuracy of these 10 16-inch main battery guns is somewhat lacking. However, you can still get some good results out of them from time to time. I think we'll see one later on in this game. But building this for secondaries, you really do make it a bit of a brawler where you want to be at close range. And the key can do that. However, torpedoes are always going to be a concern. I didn't realize until that torpedo hit me that there's an enemy destroyer in the area, and I didn't realize what the enemy destroyer was until I took 5,000 damage from the torpedoes and observed the number of them. That will be a Jaeger, a very toxic little mosquito that's hiding somewhere around this cap. Now that we know he's here, we're going to try to finish off the Bismarck with this salvo from the main battery guns. As you can see, the accuracy is a little bit more on point there, but the damage is just not quite cutting it. And the last turret, which was desynced from the other 4, well, it doesn't do any damage at all because the accuracy does leave some stuff to be desired. We've got our friendly battleship teammate pushing in toward the 2 battleships hiding behind the island. Bismarck is well on his way back to port. We've got maybe a fire burning on him. No, we don't. He goes down, we get a fist. That's fine. We're going to go behind this island here to sort of reset the situation and let these fires burn out, or potentially use DCP once it comes off cooldown in 10 seconds. But Sinop, that's actually going to stop our forward progress if he decides he wants to come around that island with no HP left. Sinop, being a tier 6 battleship, of course, has an overmatchable bow by 16-inch guns, so if he turns bow in, we'd still be able to sink him. And he's going after our cruiser, so we don't want to go fully behind this island. We've got just enough room to get the rear 3 turrets out, and there goes Sinop for our first kill of the game. Meanwhile, I believe the friendly Albemarle takes down another ship, and we're ahead of the enemy team on kills by 1. There's the Jaeger that hit us with torpedoes earlier. He's not going to be hittable, hiding behind the island. And frankly, he's got a München, or some German cruiser, I think, on our team over there, probably spotting him through the island with sonar, unless he was spotted because he was shooting his guns at our teammate, which would be a wild development. It's not like the Jaeger has very good guns. In any case, it's just him here. The Flandre has gone down. So here's New Orleans. Just New Orleans and Jaeger on this side of the map, nothing else. That's good. We don't need to deal with the Jaeger. We can leave that to the German cruiser, who will be more than capable of taking care of that destroyer, and we can shoot at the New Orleans on our way toward the unclaimed Bravo cap. There we get an example of what I was saying earlier. The main battery is certainly not consistent if you build for the secondaries, but not consistent doesn't mean it doesn't work. Unfortunately, it doesn't dev strike the New Orleans, but he does go down. And Jaeger is next. He's being pursued by that cruiser who's coming around the island, and that cruiser has Jaeger's number. He's going to clear that destroyer off the board. It's going to become a 4v3, and we're going to head toward the Bravo cap. Part of the reason I wanted to show you this battle is because you can get a taste of the secondary efficacy. As you could see, we got 77 hits. They did damage. They lit 2 fires. I'd say they're decent. Because the Amagi exists as a battleship that you can build for the main battery guns, I think now it gives Key much more of a reason to be played, since you can build into the secondaries. It's different from the Amagi. You couldn't get the same results in that ship. But now, with this rework or this buff on the Key, it is a secondary brawler, and it can function fairly decently as one. But part of the reason I wanted to show you this game is because, of course, a lot of the games I show you are cherry-picked, right? I show you the good results I get, the interesting ones, the ones that I think will be good to watch. But I always like to call out my teammates when they do a good job. And this Albemarle that's pushing into the Bravo cap with me, he is going to be instrumental in winning this battle, along with the friendly Lenin, who is the other surviving battleship on the team. The Lenin, not so surprising. That ship is very powerful. The Albemarle, I don't think, is a ship that's bad, but it's not one that you would think is going to be carrying games in standard battles with random teammates. Here, though, we're making a mistake. So we know we need to get the Bravo cap. That's going to secure the win conditions. If we have that, then the enemy team is going to need to push into the Bravo cap to retake it or to try to sink us. In other words, we have the advantage. That's something we should be recognizing in this scenario. But when I was playing this battle, I was trying to test out the bona fide brawling ability of the key. And so I wasn't really concerned with maintaining the advantage. I wanted to see how survivable can we be? How much secondary mayhem can we cause against a Connecticut? Well, it's not just the Connecticut. You can see the Albemarle telling us to get back. He's right. We should be getting back. We should not be pushing in. Why? Because there are 3 ships directly in front of our face. The Connecticut, which can drop us with these airstrikes. Luckily, he's missing. The Harlem, which can also drop us with airstrikes. And then inside of that smoke screen is the Plymouth, whose firepower, I've said from the beginning, is cracked. I don't know why that thing is at tier 7, but it is. And his AP is going to be more than capable of shredding our superstructure, along with the fire that the Harlem lit. So if you push face first into 3 ships like this, no matter really what you're in, but especially in a ship like this that's coated in 32 millimeters of armor, well, you can expect to be sent back to port quite quickly. I think even if we were in some sort of German battleship with a heavier armor scheme, we probably also would have been sent back to port, and it's no surprise Plymouth takes us down. Those torpedoes that we send out at the last moment toward the Harlem are not going to hit, but this friendly Albemarle is going to carry everything for us. They ended up taking out the Harlem. They ended up taking out the Plymouth, who had absolutely no HP, leaving only the Connecticut left alive. And as you can see, Harlem is pushing into him. Why is he telling people to get back? Well, that's because he's on 4 kills. And that Connecticut really doesn't stand a chance. He's launching his airstrikes. He's got torpedoes incoming. He's on fire. He can shoot at the Albemarle once, but his dispersion is not on point, and there's the Kraken unleashed for our friendly teammate, the Albemarle. What a game on that guy's part. He's going to end up top of the leaderboard with 3,000 base XP. We're going to be a little bit lower than that, but still 2,300 base XP in the newly reworked key with a secondary build. I'd say it's viable, and I'd say if you have the key, or if you're thinking about getting it, why not put Kondo on there with some secondary inspirations and try it out? If anything, it might not be the most effective secondary ship in the world, but it's fun, and it's a different playstyle from the Amagi, which I think is what you want in a global XP ship that's essentially a copy-paste of an existing one. Hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.